All right, friends, we're back. Your favorite podcast of the week. It's Location Weekly. It's episode number 615. We are recording on April the 11th. And as you can see on your screen, the lovely Aubriana is back from vacation. How are you?
I am good. I am, I was rested until Monday. And yeah, it was just nice to have a change of scenery. And it's supposed to be like 80 here in New York this weekend. So I came back in good timing. How are you doing? How was last week
Uh,
without me?
we missed you, but it was good. Yeah, we had a good week, and Rob did a great job filling in.
Of course he did.
And we're gonna try and make that more regular. I think he'd like it to be a little more regular now too, so that's good. Like maybe the three of us just do it. So that'll be fun. Yeah, and it's super nice in Toronto this week. It's like 25 Celsius today, and for the rest of the week in sunshine. So it's like, yeah, like high 70s, low 80s. So can't complain. And today's the home opener for the Blue Jays. They've been on the road for the first 10 games, so they're finally home.
Okay. Well, I actually have been like watching more baseball. That was one of my that's like the silly New Year's resolution I had, was to watch more baseball this season. I feel like I just missed a lot of it last season with, getting settled into a new place and busy. And so now I've been on it. So we'll
There you
see how
go.
they do, huh? Are you
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, they came home 6-4, so you can.
Are you going to the game?
I'm not going today. I'm there on Thursday. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's soon enough.
Yeah, I'll be there on Thursday. So taking our guests from Japan to the game on Thursday.
All right.
Yes.
Well, Japanese know some baseball too.
They do. They know a lot about baseball. So
World Baseball Classic champions, right?
yeah, there you go. So that was quite the matchup, though. I have to say, just one last baseball comment, like that final, like Otani versus Trout, like that was something.
I know, it was crazy.
Yeah. So
we need to have like another podcast. It's like
just about baseball. Yeah, baseball weekly. So. We're the guests that we can get on that, though. That's the question.
So we might be able to finagle something.
I think we can make it happen. All right. Well, let's jump into our show as usual. I'll let you kick it off with our first story.
Okay, so Blackbird Labs is a small kind of more startup company out of Boston, and they are focused on hospitality technology. They have a platform that connects restaurants with their customers directly. And I would say it's kind of focused on a new play on loyalty, right? So they want to partner with some of the world's best restaurants and then bring like these customer relationships to life. And they say they use cutting edge software to do that. So they are working with a restaurant here in New York, in Williamsburg, which is Brooklyn. So this restaurant's called Gertie, and they opened in 2019. Somehow, like maintained staying open through the pandemic, and now they're using Blackbird to introduce this like friends and family program, a new loyalty program. So here's some examples, right? You come and you visit one time to the restaurant, and then you're like, okay, there, one check-in or whatever is now you're a friend. And then after like 10, visits or so, or you're a neighbor, then you're a friend, and then you're family. So you get different like rewards as you visit more often, which is pretty cool. So maybe they said like a free cookie after your first tap, and then after your second or so, coffee might be on the house. So then you get all these different freebies, and then you get personalized things. So you might get like a personalized coffee mug that's always at the shop waiting for your arrival. And I think this is cool. Like I like this story because restaurants and loyalty have a really hard time. I think it's hard to do that if you're not maybe like fast food. I think Chick-fil-A, for example, kills it, right? It's easy. But when you think about more of a diner style or a restaurant or a sit down, there's probably a lot of restaurants that most of us frequent, right? Like it's our neighborhood place, or we go there once a week. It's our family place. But do we have any type of reward system for visiting there, or any type of, feeling more like a family place where you go and visit and they know what you order and your regulars. It's like that's few and far between. So I like this idea of using software to connect that and make it possible. And I think that there's an opportunity here for a lot of restaurants to follow suit and see what Gertie did. And I just want to go visit something called Gertie because it's named after, I think, the owner's grandmother, and like the logo's her face. So I don't want to just go eat there now.
Yeah, I really like this story. I'm really excited about it. I love the nostalgia, the grandmother reference that's brought in here. The imagery of that, I think it harkens back to, a simpler time where, proprietors knew their customers, personally, and there's this sort of very one-to-one relationship and, sort of very neighborhoody, right? And I think that's kind of what they're going for here as well, is this idea of neighborhood and community and these different levels of, you're a first time customer, or this is your second time there, and there's kind of these different levels. So like that first time where you're a friend, and second, after 10 visits, your family, and so on. So I love that. I think it's really well thought out. I think, that they're using NFTs to power how these rewards are delivered, and kind of your status obviously is, a modern, sort of approach to on the technology delivery side of this. They've talked about, a future state where they'll have like loyalty stamps or power ups, they're calling them. Kind of like maybe like a little bit like the old kind of Foursquare Gowalla type of models of check-ins and stamps and things like that. So I like it. I think they're combining a lot of interesting elements, a lot of sort of community focus, and I think this could be something fairly successful as a loyalty approach. I think it makes sense, especially for local restaurants and businesses like this. I'd be interested to hear what our friend Rob Woodbridge would say, because he's in a local delivery business, but it's very much focused on businesses like this, where they're doing the delivery piece of it. But how a loyalty program maybe layers on top of something like that. So I think there's a lot that can happen with this, but
Yeah.
I really like it. I think it's interesting, and I love the name too, Gertie. So all right, moving on to our second story now. So there's a location-based audio entertainment app out there called Autio. I'm not sure how they're pronouncing it. I'm going to go with Autio. Autio is how it's spelled. It used to be formerly known as Here. And one of the co-founders of the company is Kevin Costner, the actor. So they've just raised $5.9 million. This is a second seed round with new terms. The funding was led by iHeartMedia, which is also, I think, very interesting when you see a major player like iHeart get into this. So the way the app works is it uses GPS to narrate stories that are location-based, that landmarks, cities, towns, and so on. And the idea or the aim of it is to foster these sort of deeper connections or understandings of the places that we're visiting. So obviously it's not, brand new concept. We've talked about other location-based audio apps before. On the show, we've talked about music and bands, like I remember on the show many years ago, we covered a band called Blue Brain that had recorded music, at Central Park or different places. But you could only consume or listen to the album that they recorded when you were physically in the park. So it was triggered, based on your GPS or your location. So this is very similar to that, but it's focused on telling the stories of places. It could be historical, monuments or battlefields or landmarks or different kinds of things like that. So I think it's very interesting. Besides Kevin Costner, the other founders are Woody Sears and Bill Werlin. So it's been around since 2020. They have over 1,500 location-based stories. They started with 1,500 location-based stories. It's over 10,000 now. They have about 230 registered users on the app across the US. It's currently only iOS, but apparently they're in testing right now with an Android version. So I assume that's part of the funding, is to promote that out further. and most of the stories themselves, the audio stories, are narrated by Kevin Costner or other actors like John Lithgow or Phil Jackson and folks like that. So I think it's super interesting. And with a free account, you can get 5 stories, and then they have paid accounts that cost $36 a year with unlimited access to the stories. So, yeah, any thoughts on this, Aubriana?
No, I like this. I think we've heard a lot of these, like, I don't know, almost think of them as like audio tour guides. You go into a place and you can get this tour. But I think this is more unique, right? Where you can have certain stories and access them like in the context in which they want to be consumed. And I think that's a really beautiful thing, and it's artistic. And maybe there's one at the Field of Dreams, Kevin
Maybe
Costner.
there is. There you go.
Back to baseball. Had to
Yet
bring it
again,
home.
baseball's back on our show. Like it never leaves, really.
It doesn't.
So there you go. All right.
Okay, well, let's go to Australia for this next story. And JCards has launched this time tracking app that's really designed for, I would say, mobile workforces, right? So think of companies like in the construction or trade industry or other workforces that are like on the go, operating in multiple locations. Maybe it's a cable and internet provider or something like that. So JCards now has this workers clock in and clock out time cards, in essence, within an app, and it helps with time management. So really, the app allows their employees to log their time within, just a couple of clicks. And then they can also follow the employees' movements with GPS. So just, being sure that they can generate these detailed reports. Maybe it's like, how many customers are they servicing, or, how many sites are they visiting, perhaps. So they would include time and attendance tracking, and then deliver those insights and that information and data to payroll, where typically maybe those things would be running in siloed, forms and separate. So all the payroll professionals can use tools like they have biometric identity verification, geo-tracking to help the managers better manage their employees' times. And then they can have that collaboration with the payroll providers as well. So, I think this is really cool because it kind of makes me think of what a lot of us use who are behind a computer all day, like a Monday or a Trello or a Roadmonk or something like that, where we're tracking our tasks and, the progress that we're making perhaps on projects or anything like that, or like where we can go in and see what our teams are doing, right? And their progress on certain commercialization efforts, in the tech industry. And this is really made for a different workforce. So I think that this is really interesting. And we've heard of a lot of these tracking efforts before, but I like that they're calling out how they connect this to payroll specifically, and being able to help with better time management, or, maybe even looking at productivity across teams and how they can maybe reward employees for that. I'm sure there's a lot of different implications here that can come out of it. So I think this is pretty cool. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's super functional, right? I mean, I think there's a lot of mobile workforces out there in different industries. Even from the restaurant perspective, right, we were talking about earlier, right? I mean, we know how challenging that industry segment is right now in terms of just finding workers. Coming off of COVID, there's so many vacancies. In retail and restaurants and all these places, and I think even just managing people filling shifts or broadcasting messages out based on geography, or things like that, to find people and then track where they are and keep track of that, and then tie that back to payroll. I think that's an absolute necessity, right? And then when you talk about site-based mobile workforces, be it construction or things like that, I think there's a lot of opportunity in this space. So for me, the big wins here are the biometric pieces, the geo-tracking components of that in terms of identifying employees and knowing where those employees are, and then the fact that it's tied back to payroll providers, and you can automatically sync that up with what's going on there. I think that's super interesting. I mean, in my space, like even with my startup, like we're a tech company and we have a lot of developers, some that are on staff, some that are part-time, or that we're using off-site. But just having those people linked in and having their timesheets, so to speak, tied to tasks and all those kinds of things is really important. and not just for our own accounting records, but I find even like here in Canada, we have like these government tax credits and all these kinds of things that, on R&D work. And so when we're doing that kind of stuff, like part of, fulfilling the requirements for the government is we have to show all those time logs. We have to show what people worked on, which projects, which tasks, like all of that in great detail. Or we don't get the funding back. So it's really important to have these kind of detailed logs in those kinds of remote workforces. So I like it.
Awesome.
Okay, last story. So we're going to jump over to the digital out of home, digital signage world now. So there's a company out there called Numbat, and they're an EV electric vehicle charging network, and they partner with Broadsign, who we know very well in the out of home space. And I think this story is, I don't, there's not a lot of innovation in this story to talk about, but really the story here is that, it's just another, sort of domino in this whole sort of sphere of electric vehicle growth and the networks, the charging networks that are happening. I know Walmart just announced, they're adding electric vehicle charging, to all of their stores in the US. 7-Eleven's doing that. Like these networks are getting built. And as these networks get built, I think one of the things that becomes really important with that is the monetization opportunities. And so you're sitting there, your car is, at a standstill while it's being charged. And, like when you go to the gas station and we have gas station TV, here you have, for a longer period of time, an opportunity to market and promote something to people on a digital signage network that's embedded in the charging, technology itself. So I think that's, a great opportunity. And we're seeing not just Broadsign, but others, including Samsung, Palmer Digital, others are all jumping into this space and kind of getting involved in it. So I think it makes sense. I think we're riding this big, EV revolution wave right now. And it's great to see guys like Broadsign and Numbat partnering up on things like this. This is, by the way, in Europe is where Numbat is operating their network. I think one of the things for me that not specific to this story, but to the general phenomenon of the combination of digital out of home and EV charging networks is the location or data analytics opportunity. I can tell you with my company, we've been talking to one of the EV charging network companies here in Canada, and they have digital signage, they have brands advertising on those screens, but being able to then measure the ROI on that advertising, I think, is really interesting. So if they're running ads for, I'm just making this up, McDonald's, while you're charging your car, do you actually have data that then says that, the person or that car, and the person that's driving that car then went to a McDonald's in the next week or month or what have you? Can you actually tie that back? And I think, those things become really interesting to have that kind of marketing analytics. So that's some of the work that, we're doing here in Canada, with folks. But I think that, all of these digital signage operators need to be, thinking that way in terms of, providing some mechanism for measurement of the performance of the ads that are running on the network.
Yeah, I think that like we're seeing this trend, whether it's like the retail media networks or, these digital out of home companies that are starting to like try to just, ignite more opportunities for advertising and in existing real estate space, if you will. And I think the winners that we'll see longer term will be those that can stitch it together, right? With other data, with other exposure points, across the same audience, right? And being able to kind of make those multiple touch points instead of it just being like one-offs. And so, I mean, I'm kind of like throwing this out there, but I predict at some point we'll see some consolidation across all of these networks. There'll be some clear winners, but I think it's interesting just to pay attention to these ones that are popping up.
We will check back on that, Aubriana, when it's our prediction show in December.
I know.
See what's happening.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So if you're in Europe, check that out. Numbat and Broadsign are working on a digital out of home signage network on EV charging. So that's it. That's our 4 stories for this week. You've been listening and watching episode number 615 of Location Weekly. Thank you so much for your time. If you have story ideas, reach out to us. If you have feedback, we want that too. And we'll see you next week for another show. Have a great week, everybody.